Hi everyone, thanks for dropping by and for returning to the old world. Today let's have a look at the latest development diary on Warhammer Community, talking about Warhammer, the old world, and what this tells us. There's a few things I want to think about here, one of which is the concept art we're seeing, second is the setting, third is army balance, and then a couple of other bits and bobs. Let's start with the concept art. So we've seen a few pictures now around Tomb Kings, and this development diary was very much focused on Tomb Kings and the land of etc. We've seen chariots, warriors, and some constructs. And the look of these bits of art suggests that the units are going to be very similar to the kind of things that we saw in 8th edition, which I think will definitely be welcomed by people with existing armies who are looking to collect towards being ready for the old world being released and want to play with Tomb Kings. So they kind of know the kind of look of the army, what kind of units we're going to see on the tabletop. We won't know exactly what's good and what's not until the rules are released, but for now, we're seeing the direction of travel as to how the thing is going to look. Let's go to the setting. It's interesting that the talk in the diary is around the Tomb Kings invading the old world. This being the traditional old world, effectively invasions into Europe. Now this does suggest to me that the new game will have a smaller setting when it comes to the map. We're not going to see a whole world of development. We're going to see a focus on things that are happening in the old world itself. And for me, that opens the doorway a little bit to future releases. And if you think in computer game terms, such as, Total War Warhammer, fleshing out places outside of the old world within the Warhammer fantasy wider world could well be in the form of other books, other releases, DLC in other terms, if we're using that computer game analogy. So that brings me now on to army balance, and there's some comments there about how hard they've worked on making the game, well, the army balance. Now I think that's quite interesting because the undead have generally been either really good or really not when it's come to the game. Vampire counts, they're not Tomb Kings, yes, but they are undead, so I'm going to include them here. In 7th, 8th, they have the potential to be really, really powerful and very difficult to deal with. And the same is true of some previous editions when fear was a really powerful thing. If you were outnumbered by a fear causer, you were in trouble. So large units of skeletons and zombies could be really problematic. On the flip side, Tomb Kings during 8th edition struggled very much from being an early army book, and they struggled to be competitive. Yes, they had some tricks. Yes, people could do okay with them, but generally speaking, they weren't up there in the upper tiers at all. So on one hand, you had a flavour of undead that was really powerful, and on the other, you had a flavour which nobody really bothered to play with very much. So it'll be interesting to see how the development and the work on balancing the armies affects the Tomb Kings. Now, I did mention there were some other bits, and really what I'm focusing in here is there's some comments in the developer diary around raiders from far off lands, and that other raiders are going to get a mention in the future. Again, this makes me think that other parts of the Warhammer world aren't going to be as fleshed out as perhaps we would like, opening the door for DLC style expansions, be it books, whatever, coming down the track later. But there is specific mention of raiders coming from far off lands. Now, I initially went, I wonder if that means the Norse are going to have a bit more of a say. But they're kind of old world, really, aren't they? And once I got past this initial thought, I'm thinking, well, let's face it, surely it's got to be the Dark Elves. We know that they come across raiding for slaves and stuff. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. Are they going to be another faction that's not necessarily going to have a base within the old world setting, but are going to make regular appearances to affect the storytelling? I could, of course, be entirely wrong with that guess, but who knows? What do you think who these raiders are? Is it Dark Elves? Is it High Elves? Is it someone else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Other than that, all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for dropping by. This is Return to the Old World. Have a great day and consider subscribing.